Now that we've had a chance to work with the basics of Photoshop, it's time to turn to some of the more powerful features. In this section, we will learn about grouping layers, how to work with adjustment layers, and make our work more precise through the use of grids and guides. Previously, we learned that designers organize the elements of an image on layers in Photoshop. This allows for manipulating some of the elements separate from the rest of the image. So for instance, you can move an element or apply a filter to that element without impacting any other part of the work. Sometimes, however, you might find that you want to work with multiple elements that are on different layers. In this case, you would group those layers together in the Layers panel on the right side of the interface in Photoshop. More information about how to do this can be found in the videos and sites listed in the Photoshop Resources section in the Digital Images module in eLearning. Photoshop provides a wealth of tools for manipulating images. However, there are some downsides to the way we've used those tools up to this point. When you make changes to a layer or a whole image, you're manipulating the actual data about the pixels that make up the image. If you want to undo these changes or otherwise modify the changes later, you're working with modified data. A better way to do this is to use an adjustment layer. This adds a layer to an existing layer that stores the changes from the original data. Therefore, if you want to make further changes to the original data, it's preserved. While this adds an extra step to the process of working with images, it's generally worth it because it gives you maximum flexibility when it comes to making changes because those changes are stored separately from the actual data. Now, visually, this looks just like it would have before. It's just that those changes are now in an adjustment layer and the original data is preserved so that you can make more precise changes later on. It also makes undoing easier. Again, there are some excellent resources for learning about this technique in the Photoshop Resources section in eLearning. Not surprisingly, when you need precision in Photoshop, you use a ruler, just like you would with physical media. The rulers in Photoshop allow you to position elements very accurately and obviously also determine the size and the alignment of elements. You can make rulers visible by selecting Rulers in the View menu. You can change the units displayed in the rulers using the Rulers and Units and Rulers section in the Preferences, or simply by right-clicking on the ruler and selecting which unit you want to use. Guides are a fantastic addition to the relatively simple functionality of rulers. You can pull these guides out of the ruler by clicking on a ruler and dragging the lines into your image. These lines will not show up when you export or print your image. They're just there to show you, how you can align and make sure that things line up in your work. You can also have Photoshop help you align those elements by selecting guides in the Snap To item in the View menu. This will make the guides act like little magnets, and the elements will snap over to them when you get close to it. It makes it a lot easier to line up the elements in your design. You can move the guides around as needed. Sometimes, however, you might want them to stay put, especially if you have a whole bunch of them on screen. In this case, you can lock the guides in place by selecting the Lock Guides item in the View menu. If you want to get rid of all those guides, maybe at the end, or you change your mind on how you want the guides to be there, you can select the Clear Guides item from the View menu. Designs that are based on grids are aesthetically pleasing. A grid doesn't necessarily need to be fully visible, but the elements of a design should follow some sort of grid layout pattern. You can create this grid using guides. Using the Snap to Grid functionality greatly improves the efficiency of using this grid layout. So for instance, what's on screen right now, you could very easily have those elements of text and so forth snap to those specific lines and line up. Makes it a lot easier to work within that grid layout. We have two resources to look at for more information about grid layouts. The first one is from designerinsights.com, and it's called Using Layout Grids Effectively. And this article is predominantly focused on print media, but we've seen that because of the improvements in technology for online media and digital media, a lot of what previously we said applied just to print now also applies to digital media. And so I think there's a lot of really great information in there that holds true for what we do in this class from here on forward. Another site that I want you to look at is the 960 grid. This is a very, very widely used grid layout for websites and things like that. A huge number of websites use this as the grid basis for their design. It's also used as the basis for a lot of themes in content management systems like WordPress that we'll look at it in this class as well, and also things like Drupal and Joomla.